Good morning, I am Giovanni Costabile, and today I will present my volume, The Mirror of Desire Unbidden, retrieving the Imago Dei in Tolkien and late medieval English literature. The book is published by Peter Lang International Academic Publishers. It is published this year in 2024. And it belongs to the series Studies in English Medieval Language and Literature, volume 65. It comes in 422 pages. To begin with, one notices that there are three omissions in our consideration of Tolkien's literature. The first is the role that Tolkien means to play in the history of Western fantasy. Tolkien is usually considered the father of fantasy in the sense that he created the literary genre of fantasy, but there is more to this. The second omission is the importance of late medieval English literature as a source for Tolkien's inspiration. Tolkien is usually considered to be a scholar of Old English, whereas he was chiefly a scholar of Middle English. The third element is the correlated notions of woman, body, and sexuality that are usually removed or considered to be removed from Tolkien's narratives, and this is another aspect that is going to be treated. A fourth removal can be added, that is the omission of the religion. Even though Tolkien's lectures are filled with reference to Catholic religion, one can see how the texts comprising the legendarium actually contain only a few references to organized religion. The first part of the book is going to be devoted to the history of Western fantasy, which is necessary to frame Tolkien. The first chapter is going to be dedicated to image and likeness, whereas the second is phantasia in ancient literature and philosophy. The third is the original sin of phantasia. The fourth is better to see God in phantasia. The fifth is fantastic apparitions and fairy, and the sixth is gold mountains and real fantasy. Starting from image and likeness, in the first chapter we begin with a quote from Genesis. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And in Genesis 5:1-2, in the day that God created the man, he created him in his own likeness. Male and female he created them, and he blessed them. And in the day they were created, he called them man. In Jewish thought, this is the beginning of imagination. In biblical Hebrew, Yasser. This word is only used 9 times in the Old Testament, and always in a negative sense, although it comes from the root of the verb yasar, that means to mold into a form, and also it is the verb whence come the words for fashion, frame, potter, purpose. Yasar is one of the verbs used for describing God's act of creation, and more specifically, it is often used for the creation of man. For example, in Genesis 2:7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. The word for formed here is waizer, precisely from the verb yazar. In this way, the contrast between the ability of God to create and man's workmanship comes to the detriment of the latter, and the opposition is used as a symbol of the alternative between observance and lack of observance of God's law. Yazar may fashion idols, and so stands for the adoration of idols. And in the light of this, Yazar becomes the evil imagination, the contrivance of thoughts, and actions violating God's law, a first step towards actual misdeed and misconduct. It comes to be termed Yeser Ara, evil imagination or evil inclination, and distinguished from Yeser Atov, good imagination or good inclination. These are the opposite dispositions to act badly or well, respectively. However, there is also a notion that the evil inclination can be good, because in Genesis Rabbi it is stated, "Behold, it was very good," Genesis 1:31, refers to the good Yetzer, and "Behold, it was very good" refers to the evil Yetzer. But is evil Yetzer good? Rather, without evil Yetzer, no man would build a house, take a wife, or beget children. Nonetheless, soon in Judaism, misogyny took hold, and in some texts we find misogynous notions, such as the fact that a young girl can be blamed if she is ashamed to stand naked before her father, or that there is an evil seductress, an evil demon of seduction, like one finds in the Qumran text called 4Q 184. This misogyny comes from the Persian tradition of Mazdaism, where the highest deity Aura Mazda or Ormazd tells woman called derogatorily Ja or whore. Even my creation are thou, whose antagonist is the race of vicious persons, J. By me hast thou been given an orifice nearest the anus, with which thou so feelest sexual pleasure as the taste of delicious eatables by means of the mouth. Thou helpest my seed, for man is born not either from. Thou surpassest me too, who am more mad. But if I had secured a garment wherefrom I could make man, I would never have created thee, whose antagonist is the race of J. But I searched in the water, the earth, the tree, and the beneficent animal, on the summits of the mountains, and even in the deep ravines. I did not find any garment wherefrom the holy man would be made, except woman, whose antagonist is the rest of J. It really does not need any comment to see the misogyny. It is found in this text that comes from Bundaism. The influence of Persian religion on Israel it also explains the misogyny that is later found in Christianity and Islam. But in the Hebrew culture, there was also room for a positive notion of woman, because even God had a female aspect, identified often in the 10th Sephiroth of the Kabbalists, the emanation of God, which was female, and she was called Shekinah, and also the bride, as long as God himself is the bridegroom. And in Likutei Moharan, one reads how God can be a female himself. It is known that the recipient of delight from someone else is called a female. Therefore, when the Holy One, blessed be he, receives the light from the prayer of Israel, it is as if he becomes a female in relation to Israel, since by the smell that God receives from the prayer of Israel, he then becomes the secret of the female. And Rabbi Menahem Nahum of Chernobyl also describes the union between the bridegroom and the bride as the same as the assembly of Israel and the Holy One, as the union between the assembly of Israel and the Holy One, like the joy of the bridegroom for on his bride. Agrippa was probably aware of Kabbalah in his declamatio de nobilitate et precellentia feminae sexus, or declaration of the nobility and preeminence of the female sex, wrote that dignity was to woman above man by order of creation, because woman was created last, and not because she was less worthy, but because she was more worthy, the most perfect completion of all the works of God. Maryland observes how the only Jewish prayer invoking Imago Dei is the benedictions of marriage, and that the Talmudic sages regard abstinence from having children as diminishment of the icon of God in the world. In Christianity, on the other hand, church fathers read the blessing a commandment to procreate as referring mainly to education and intellectual spiritual growth. St. Augustine explained that the blessing of sexual procreation was needed in prehistoric times, before the world had become populated, whereas in his time celibacy was preferable to active sexual life. The Latin patriarchs, and particularly Augustine, considered only an indestructible and redeemable soul as endowed with Imago Dei, not a perishable body of flesh and bones. This has been a faithful turn of exegesis. The rabbinic association of Imago Dei with the vulnerable body as a very poetics of dignity that is protective of the body and of its sexuality. The early church saw dignity only in the eternal part of humans, and its ethics of dignity is an ethics of respect for the rational, spiritual, and moral in the person only. Karl Barth, in this light, pointed out that it is striking but incontestable that the biblical witness makes no reference at all to the peculiar intellectual and moral talents and possibility of man, to his reason and its determination and exercise. It is not in something which distinguishes him from the beasts, but in that which formerly has in common with them. It is that God has created him male and female, that he is this being in differentiation and relationship, and therefore in natural fellowship with God. The only thing that we are told about the creation of man, apart from the fact that it was accomplished by the word of God in and after the image of God, is that God created them male and female. Everything else that is said about man has reference to this plural. He is male and female. Coming to Tolkien, he emphasized both freedom and dependence of subcreation, as in a letter to Peter Hastings, he thinks that it is a tribute to the infinity of the potential variety of God's creation, that it can be liberated from the channel that the Creator is known to have used. But Tolkien also stresses dependence when Aura in the Silmarillion says that the making of things is in my heart from my own making by thee, when he talks to Erwin Water. In this same letter, Tolkien explicitly compares subjective freedom to free will, because he writes that the former is not a guarantee that it will be used wisely, not any more that it is the case with free will. And in another letter, Tolkien compares subcreation to procreation, even though he seems to be denying the connection itself, stating that the self subcreate seems to have no biological function. But the very fact that he needs to state so proves that he was aware of the connection. In the second chapter, Phantasia in Ancient Literature and Philosophy, I am going to treats the divine epiphany, which is the natural form that phantasia took in the origins. Erotic epiphany is a kind of epiphany. The epiphany is the apparition of a god or a goddess. In the case when it is erotic epiphany, it refers to narratives of amorous liaisons between divinities and humans, whether gods and mortal women, goddesses and mortal men, or homosexual relationships. Sorry. This is the definition given by Georgia Petridou in her 2016 book on divine epiphanies. One example of these epiphanies is the story of the son of Ariston, because his mother says that a man exactly like Ariston came to visit her and lied with her, and then went away. Ariston came back and learning that she thought she had just met him, she had already met him. He was confused, and so when the son was born, and it was clear that he was special, Ariston was put to shame and had to explain himself. So this is a story that is told by Herodotus, and the apparition of the god, that is probably Astrabagus the hero, is called a phantom or a phasma in Greek, which is a word that is related to phantasia. The original notion of phantasia as a divine epiphany is does not last for long, because already the philosopher Parmenides in the 6th century puts it into question by introducing the notion of phantasias apates. As we know from the Diogenes Laertius, who in Lives of the Philosophers 9:23 writes that Parmenides introduced thought instead of imagination deceit, and imagination deceit is phantasias apates. Apate was probably a goddess. Chapter 3 is dedicated to the original sin of phantasia. So we have seen that the original notion of phantasia in ancient Greece changed to the idea of deception and delusion from an original idea of divine epiphany. But further step down the road is taken by Christians, and especially by Augustine, who in the City of God states, "There is too a very general rumor, which many have verified by their own experience, which trustworthy persons who have heard the experience of others corroborate, that Sivans and Fauns, who are commonly called incubi, had often made wicked assaults upon women and satisfied their lust upon them, and that certain devils, called Juices by the Gauls, are constantly attempting and affecting this impurity, is so generally affirmed that you were impudent deny it." From these assertions, indeed, I dare not determine whether there be some spirits embodied in aerial substance, for discernment, even when agitated by a fan, is sensibly felt by the body, and who are capable of lust and of mingling sensibly with women. But certainly I would by no means believe that gods or angels could at any time have so fallen. End quote. Augustine is influenced by the Manichaees in these notions. because even though he used to be a Manichaean, he rejected Manichaeism while still retaining some aspects of Manichaean thought. And Manichaeism, of course, is progeny of Mazdaism. So through Manichaeism, the Mazdian misogyny reached Christianity. A misogyny that is evident in interpretations of Matthew 5:27-28. You have heard that it was said of old, thou shalt not commit adultery. Exodus 20:14. But I say to you that whosoever shall look on a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Robertson comments in his preface to Chaucer. St. Augustine, contrary to prevailing modern opinion, finds the justice of the second command, which wars against sin in the heart, to be greater than the first, which is concerned only with overt action. At the same time, the second confirms and fulfills the first. To lust after a woman and to look on a woman to lust after her are different, since the second implies not only that the observer is tickled by fleshly delight, but also that he has passed through the stages which are involved in the commission of any sin: suggestion, delight, or pleasurable thought, and consent. End quote. Apart from the writing of St. Augustine on the Sermon of the Mount, where he comments on the passage from Matthew which we have seen, the other authors reprise the same notion as Augustine, and especially I should read from John de Scott, the Divinibus Naturibus. When a fantasy of gold or of some precious material is impressed on the corporal sense, the fantasy seems to that sense beautiful and naturally attractive, because it is founded upon a creature which is extrinsically good. But the woman, that is, the carnal sense, is deceived and delighted, failing to perceive hiding beneath this false and fancied fantastical beauty, a malice which is cupidity, which is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. Whosoever shall look on a woman to lust after her, our Lord says, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. But if he had spoken openly, he might have explained, whoever impresses the fantasy of feminine beauty on his carnal sense has already committed adultery in his thought, desiring the wickedness of libido, which secretly attracts him beneath the imagination of the false beauty of that woman. End quote. And the same is found also in the Middle English Canary, where one reads in Mary Bizarre's translation, for which Tolkien wrote the preface. Of Eve, her first mother, it is recorded at the very beginning of her sin, it sent it was through her eyes. And further on, Bethsabe also, by unclothing herself before David's eyes, caused him to sin with her, even though he was solely a king and a prophet of God. And returning to Eve, she began to take delight in looking at the forbidden fruit, and to desire it, and she plucked some of it and ate it. This apple, my dear sister, symbolizes all things towards which desire and sinful delight turn. The author of the Uncanny Rule knew Augustine since he cites him. An unchaste eye is my messenger of an unchaste heart, says Augustine. Quote. In 3 steps of sin are the same as in Augustine, even in word, in sight, delight, desire, and deed. But even though Augustine was influenced by the Manichaees, he was also influenced by Neoplatonics. And among the Neoplatonics, misogyny was prevalent, and the despise of fantasy. but there were a few Neoplatonics for whom fantasy was something good and even divine. For example, Synesius of Cyrene, in his words, if it is a brass thing to behold God with one's eyes, grasping by way of imagination, the phantasian, is an even higher kind of beholding, for this is the perception of perceptions, in that the imaginative spirit, though fantasticon pneuma, is the most widespread faculty of perception, and is the first body of the soul. End quote. And in the fifth chapter, Fantastic Apparition and Fairy, I start by quoting from Burkhard of Worms Decretum in the year 1000, about the year 1000, a passage which is usually considered to be the birth certificate of fairies. Have you believed that these women exist, called fates by the people, and that they possess the powers attributed to them? Have you believed that at the birth of a man they do with him as they please, as if that man could, if he wished, transform himself into a wolf, which the foolishness of the people calls a werewolf, or take on another form? If you believed it plausible that a divine image could take on any other shape or appearance except by the will of Almighty God, you must do penance for 10 days with bread and water. Have you believed that there exist sylvan female creatures who are called women of the forest, and who are said to be creatures of corporeal substance, who show themselves when they please, to their lovers to take pleasure with them, but who, when they want, hide and vanish? If you believe this, you must do penance for 10 days on bread and water. Further instances of fairies and fairy lovers appear in literature. In a later manuscript from the 13th century, it is stated that Aachen is called there, and it is said that Charles the Great kept there a certain woman of faith, or a certain faith, who is called by another name, a nymph or a goddess or the Adrias, the Dryads. And he had this custom and knew her, and so it was that she lived by the very approach to her, and died by the very withdrawal of Charles. It happened this. It happened that, while he had approached her on a certain occasion and was enjoying himself with her, a ray of the sun entered her mouth, and then Charles saw a grain of gold attached to her tongue, which she caused to be cut off, and as soon as she touched it, she died, and did not revive afterwards. End quote. In the 12th century, Walter Mappin's Energiscolarium includes at least 5 narratives of fairy wives that can be titled The Tales of Guastino of Guestinog, Edric the Wild, The Breton Knight, Enno Condentibus, and Gerberdo the Yak. According to Alberto Valvaro, this sort of tale may be summarized this way. 1. The hero meets in a fated time, mid-day or night, one or more women in a deserted place. 2. He possesses one of them and marries her. 3. The woman promises him love and fortune at a condition, not to talk about her origins, not to eat her, etc. 4. The woman is fertile and presumably also obedient and faithful. 5. The condition is not respected. 6. As a consequence, the woman disappears, leaving one or more children behind, usually a nephew. End quote. And in Gervais of Tilbury Socia Imperialia, we read that this fact, ghosts and human beings, is confirmed every day by people of absolute credibility. We have heard that some men have fallen in love with this kind of larvae they call fairies, and that they, wanting to marry other women, died before joining the new companions. Instead, we have seen them, most of them lived in absolute earthly happiness. Some of them, when they have escaped the embraces of these fairies, or have publicly revealed their nature, not only have they lost material prosperity, but also any comfort to their miserable life. I do not know what the meaning of these things is. I only know that these of the sinner angels who receive boasted with the devil are reserved for apparitions of this type to bring trouble to man. And these fairy narratives are probably related to the necessity of adultery, which is stated by Marie de Champagne to Andreas Capellanus in a letter dated May 1, 1174. She wrote, "We declare and all thus firmly established that love cannot exert its powers between two people who are married to each other." Indeed, in Chrétien de Troyes Lancelot, love, according to Gaston Paris, is illegitimate, furtive. The lover is always in an unfit situation before the woman, and the lover accomplishes all the feats. The fourth feature is that love is an art, a science, a virtue which has its rules, the chivalry of courtesy. But phantasia was not always despised in the Middle Ages. For example, in Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, we find the Aristotelian notion that phantasia can be combinative and dissociative, which belongs to man only, and it is the ability to combine and dissociate phantasm. I quote, "As when from the imaginary form of gold and imaginary form of mountain, we compose the one form of a gold mountain which you have never seen. But this operation is not to be found in animals other than man, in whom the imaginative power, phantasia, suffices thereto." And in Tolkien's On Fairy Stories, we similarly read, "We may put a deadly grin upon a man's face and produce a horror. We may make the rare and terrible blue moon to shine, or we may cause woods to spring with silver leaves, and rams to wear fleeces of gold, and put hot fire into the belly of the cold worm. But in such fantasy as it is called, new form is made, fairy begins, man becomes a sub-creator." Moreover, in the Summa Theologica, Aquinas stated that we are united to God by the habit of grace and by the act of contemplation and love. Therefore, whatever severs the former of these unions is always a sin, but not always that which severs the latter, since a lawful occupation about lower things distracts the mind so that it is not fit for actual union with God. And this is especially the case in carnal intercourse, wherein the mind is withheld by the intensity of pleasure. For this reason, those who have to contemplate divine things or endure sacred things are enjoined not to have to do with their wives for that particular time, and it is in this sense that the Holy Ghost, as regards the actual revelation of hidden things, did not touch the hearts of the prophets at the time of the marriage act. End quote. This is important because it proves that Aquinas in the Middle Ages did not think that priests had nothing to do with sex. Coming to Dante, in the fifth book of Inferno, in the fifth canto of Inferno, the adulterers Paul and Francesca are condemned because they were led into adultery by reading the book Lancelot by Chrétien de Troyes, which we were discussing. And there the illicit love between Lancelot and Guinevere is narrated. And these are the carnal sinners who subject reason to desire, which means that they are led into an adulterous relationship. Maybe it's a stretch, but Also at the end of Paradiso, in the 33rd canto, when Dante comes before God, the last thing he is behind is his fantasy, because to my fantasy your power failed, but already my desire and will were rolled, even as a wheel that moved equally by the love that moved the sun and the other stars. In the second part of the volume, I will treat fantasy and fairy in late medieval English literature and in Tolkien. The first chapter, the seventh chapter actually, is going to be dedicated to Marian songs, the eighth chapter to Elf erotica, the ninth to the refusal of adultery, the tenth to Phantom and Fairy, the 11th to the One Ring of King Solomon, and the 12th to the retrieval of the Imago Dei. There is the presence of Marian hints in various songs in Tolkien's narrative, and especially those sung by Luthien. For example, in The Lay of Leithian 11, in lines 33:48 to 33:53, we read, love is mine, as great a power as thine, to shake the gate and tower, that which challenge weak and frail, that yet endures and will not fail, nor yield unvanquished where eternal, beneath the foundations of the world. The Tachos, Song of Songs, 8:6, love is strong as death, jealousy as hard as hell, the lamps thereof are fires and flames. And his Southwest collection of Middle English lyrics, we read, and I lay on a night, rolling my longing, that truly so a wonder to behold, a maiden rocking a child. The maiden would bring her child to sleep without a song. The child thought that she did wrong, and bid his mother sing. Sing, no mother, said the child, what shall happen to me when I get older? So do all mothers. Sweet son, said she, what should I sing to you? I never knew more of you but Gabriel's greeting. Greeted me godly on his knee, and said, Hail Mary, full of grace, God is with you, you shall bear the Messiah. This is similar to a poem by Tolkien titled Noel that he published in 1936. The ancient dome of Avonshire was pricked with distant light, a star came shining white and clear, alone above the night. In the dale of dark, in the tower of birth, one voice on a sudden sang, then all the bells in heaven and earth together at midnight rang. Mary sang in his world below, they heard their song arise, o'er mist and over mountain snow, to the walls of paradise. And the tongues of Mary Bell was stirred in heaven's stars to ring, when the voice of mortal maid was heard, that was mother of heaven's king. There is also another lyric in Sabbath's collection. Relay my delight, my dear song, my sweetling. Relay, my dear heart, my own dear darling. I saw a fair maiden sitting and singing. She ran a little child, a sweet lordling. That is the Lord that made all things. Of all lords he is Lord. Of all kings, king. There was great melody at the child's birth. All those who were in heaven's bliss made great mirth. Angels bright sang that night and said to the child, Blessed be thou, and she that is both meek and mild. Let us now pray to the child and to his dear mother, that they may grant their blessing to those who celebrate. In his letter to Milton Waldman, Tolkien said that the chief of the stories of the Silmarillion, and the one most fully treated, is the story of the Baron of Luthien and the Elf Maiden. The story is, I think, a beautiful and powerful heroic fairy romance, receivable in itself with only general vague knowledge of the background, but it is also a fundamental link in the cycle, the proof of its full significance out of its place therein. This means that the story of Baron and Luthien has a special significance. The Marian songs are also songs of the angels before God in prayer. I heard them not them new accord, a delight as loyal to listening ear, as harpers harping on harps afore. This new song now they sang full clear, with resounding notes in double accord, making choir their music's dear. Before God's very throne drawn near, and the beast swim bowed in loneliness, and the ancient elders grave of cheer, they sang their song there nonetheless. Lucian's song, since she's Tinuvial, is associated with love and with nightingales, which is the meaning of the name Tinuvial. This means that she can be associated with the Virgin Mary, because Tobre Lomax reports that the Virgin Mary is associated with nightingales. This is also due to the fact that the nightingale is a shy bird, as Van der Wielen testifies. Nonetheless, the nightingale is also associated with sex and with male and female genitals. There are references in Ovid's Metamorphoses, in Chaucer, Gower, and in the 15th century, Sultan of Babylon. In Chaucer's Book of the Duchess, one finds not the nightingale but small birds. And at dawn there I lay, my bed all naked, and looked forth before I was woken by a great number of small birds that had enticed me out of sleep through their noise and their sweet song. And as I recalled, they rested, scattered upon the tiles of the roof, and every song in its tune was like the most solemn service that any man ever heard. I swear, and all were accorded so that, to be short, there was never such a sweet choir, as though it was a joy of heaven. So many songs with tunes that, certainly apart from the Song of Songs, I think nobody ever heard the like, because all my chamber started ringing through their singing in harmony, because no instrument nor melody was ever heard that was half as sweet, nor the accord half so pleasurable. End quote. And now the 8th chapter, Elferotica. Sex equals marriage for the elves, writes Tai Rosenthal. It was the act of bodily union that achieved marriage, not the ceremony itself. This is taken directly from Roman Catholic doctrine. Rosenthal is wrong about this, because actually it is the ritual that achieves the marriage in the Roman Catholic doctrine. The bodily union is only the consummation. And a marriage that is only celebrated by the sexual union is rather called concubitus in the Roman usage. And the simple form of the word concubitus is cubitus, that carries the same meaning of sexual intercourse, and derives from the verb cubo, lay down, and incubus and succubus. Tolkien had declared himself that the explanation of the word hobbit had to be looked after in changelings and incubi. If we apply Grimm's law and Germanic vowel change, the Proto-Indo-European root cub, tai, and Latin cuba cubitus, and related terms such as, for example, English shape and modern English sheep, could also have given in Old English ob, onto which one could argue that the substantive suffix -itu could be added to form a geminated obitu, hence later obit, sexual intercourse, sexual partner. In the Lay of Lúthien, we find a description of Lúthien that is very physical. In lines 800 to 809, we read, "Thus Lúthien, no pursuit, no snare, no dart that hunters shoot, might hope to win or all, she came as the sweet calling of her name, and that in his slender hand was linked in fair Berlian, in art enchanted long ago, her arms about his neck did go, and gently down she do to rest his weary head upon her breast." This is one of the very few mention of female breasts in Tolkien. Also in the Silmarillion, we read that beyond his hope she returned to him where he sat in darkness, and long ago in the hidden kingdom she laid her hand in his. Thereafter often she came to him, and they went in secret through the woods together from spring to summer, and no others of the children of Iluvatar ever had joy so great, though the time was brief. End quote. And this could be related to the passage of Troilus and Chryside, when they felt in love the great worthiness, or experienced the great excellence of love. Indeed, often medieval authors use vague expression to state that their characters made love. But they could also be very graphic. For example, in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Lady Bertie says to Sir Gawain, "Yours be my body until the pleasure inebriates you, for nothing else can better satiate the appetite for you, which I feel in myself, than rendering you every service." And in the Miller style, the scene is even obscene when we read, "And through the window she put out her all, and Absalom felt no better nor worse, but with his mouth he kissed her naked arse, full greedily before he knew of this." Chaucer's Miller advises that a man shall not be inquisitive of God's spirit nor of his wife, should not pry into God's private affairs nor those of his wife. In a letter, Tolkien cites the same passage from the Miller style in order to explain that nobody can tell how would Gollum be judged by God if he acted badly, but if, in the very doing so, he has been a tool of providence to save Middle-earth. And then we also have Clyde Skidby's testimony. I was invited to dinner with some of the faculty at Christ Church, and afterwards one member asked me if the sermon didn't have any sex, in the modern sense, in it. Next day I mentioned this to Tolkien, and to my surprise, he said he said he had written a couple of sex stories, though he did not volunteer to show them to me. Leaders of the Lord of the Rings know the moving account of the love between Arwen and Aragorn, and when the Silmarillion is published, we shall have others of the same sort. But they are vastly different from what we call sex stories today. And Cocker, in 1978, had very brightly pointed out that the element of the plot which narrates Gawain's temptation by Vertilak's wife, who, knowing that Gawain accepts and practices the medieval code of courtly love, which culminates in the physical union of the lovers, comes to his bed on 3 successive mornings in order to seduce him. What she does not know is that Gawain is an even better Christian than he is a courtly lover, and is unable by prayer to resist to the sin of adultery, not to mention treachery to his host. The Lord of the Rings, of course, is full of temptation scenes, especially those surrounding the One Ring. End quote. This is especially interesting in the light of the fact that in 2020, in the deluxe edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight with Parent Sir Orfeo, we learned from the editor that Christopher thought that the Lay of Lycian was interdebted to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. In a 1968 interview with the Negative, Tolkien stated that Galadriel's temptation was significant in a way that could be related to sex. In this light, we should also take into account what Verlin Flieger said about the purging of the gross, to quote Tolkien, of his mythology compared to Arthurian literature. This purging actually only purges the gross of adultery, because otherwise it does not mean that no sex is present in his works. And The third omission we started from is the omission of woman, sex, and body from Tolkien's narrative. We can see that this is not a complete omission, and still it is Tolkien's way to react to the connection instituted by Augustine when he made adultery, woman, sex, and body together, linked to sin, as we have seen in the third chapter. Tolkien breaks this chain, and by doing so, he has to remove woman, sex, and body from his narrative, but he lets us see them through the chinks of his narrative, we could say. In the 10th chapter, Phantom and Fairy, I observe how Tolkien, on fairy stories, quotes from Child's Ballads of Thomas the Rhymer, and how the original medieval text is different, but this is just a glimpse of the whole chapter, because I will only offer a few glimpses of the final chapters for time reasons, and then you can see the rest in the whole book. So in on fairy stories, Tolkien quotes, "O see ye not yon narrow road, so thick beset with thorns and briars? This is the path of righteousness, though after it but few inquires. And see ye not yon broad road that lies across the level? This is the path of wickedness, though some call it the road to heaven. And see ye not yon bonny road that winds about the fenny brow? This is the road to fair Elfland, where thou and I this night maun gae." In the original manuscript, one read, "See you now that fair way that lies over the Time Mountain, that is truly the way to heaven, where sinful souls are relinquished of their pain. See you now that other way that lies below that ridge, truth be told, that is the way into the joy of paradise. See you then the third way that lies over the great plain, that is the way with tears and sorrows, where sinful souls suffer their pain. But see you now that fourth way that lies over the deep dell, that is the way so where I to the burning fire of hell. I see you now that fair castle that lies over the hill, it bears the Bernard Town Tower, on earth there is none like it yet." Chapter 11, The One Ring of King Solomon. The legend that Solomon possessed a sealed ring on which the name of God was engraved, and by means of which he controlled the demons, is related at length in the Talmudic tract called Gittin. This legend is especially developed by Arabic writers, who declared that the ring on which was engraved the most great name of God, and which was given to Solomon from heaven, was partly brass and partly iron. With the brass part, the ring of Solomon signed his written commands to the good genie, and with the iron part, he signed his commands to the evil genie or devils. This comes from the Jewish Encyclopedia. This is also confirmed in the 1925 edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by Tolkien and Gordon. The note to Ryan 620 reads, "Solomon's ear was a pentacle in a circle, which is supposed to have its beginning in the building of the temple by Solomon. This proves their awareness of the legend." Furthermore, in the 1967 revision by Norman Davis, one reads, "The figure is said to have been used by Pythagoreans as a symbol of health, and also by the Neoplatonics and Gnostics to signify perfection, but it was known to the Jews as well, thus coming to be called Solomon's ear, and is obviously related to a similar figure. The hexagram, in which two equilateral triangles interlock to form a six-pointed star. This inscribed in a circle was essentially was eventually adopted as a symbol of Judaism. The Magen David, shield of David. The pentacle was long used as a magic sign, believed to give power over evil spirits. End quote. Finally, the 12th chapter, where we read Friedman quoting from the medieval Ovid Moralized. Let us speak allegorically and say that Orpheus, the child of the sun, is Christ, the Son of God the Father, who from the beginning reduced that is the human soul to himself. But the devil, the serpent, drew near the new bride, that is created de novo, where she collected flowers, that is, where she sees the forbidden apple, and beat her by temptation and killed her by sin. And finally she went to the world below. Seeing this, Christ Orpheus wished himself to descend to the lower world, and that he took his wife, that is human nature, ripping her from the hands of the ruler of hell himself. And he led her with him to the upper world, saying this verse from Canticles 2:10. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. There are further quotes that sustain the same notion, which is relevant to Bernard Luther. Thence it follows that we all believe that at the time of rest, when the cock crows in exultant, Christ came back from the underworld. Then the extensibility of death was crushed. Then the law of Tartarus was subjugated. Then the strength of day, being greater, forced the night to go away. This is the Catamerinon by Prudentius. And in the Sequenza Morte Christi Celebrata from the 12th century, we read Sponsum suam ab inferno regno locans et superno noster traxit Orpheus. His spouse from hell, Orpheus Christ stole, for her to dwell in the kingdom of heaven. And in the B-text of Fifth Provan, one reads, for patriarchs and prophets often preach about this, that man shall save man with the help of a maiden, and that which was lost through a tree shall be won back through the tree, and which death brought down, that shall restore. End quote. This is consistent with Jeremiah 31:22. The Lord will create a new thing on earth, a woman will return to a man. And also the lamentation of Mary Magdalene in Middle English, so loving a spouse shall I never find. This is edited by Bertha Skeet, the daughter of Walter Skeet, one of Tolkien's mothers. In the conclusion, I focus on the scene of the Mirror of Galadriel to call it the Mirror of Desire Unbidden. Galadriel, after Frodo looks into the mirror, says, as ring better and as one who has borne in its own finger and seen that which is hidden, your sight is grown keener. You have perceived my thoughts more clearly than many yet have accounted as wise. And in Sir Tristram, one reads, or she wasn't sound through virtue of his grief, or she wasn't sound through virtue of his grief. This is because Sir Tristram saves his woman from her abductor, but in the story of Bernard Luthien, it is rather she who retrieves him from Mandos, and so we should rather say all he wasn't sound through virtue of her grief. Even though in the process of saving him, she saves herself, and so it is she who is, after all, whole and sound. I would like to conclude by quoting the words of Luthien herself. Iriti lammen erukin menel vir siladiriel, silos alagalad alastodin, airi non girtoniel, leiri non nimtinuriel. When the moon jewel of the firmament shines on the watch for us, children of the one, then flower and tree listen in silence. O Lady of the West, Star Kindler, or To Thee I Sing, O Nightingale. Thank you.